Let's talk about what are the common cases that I see in my practice, and probably the common cases that most of you, I imagine, deal with. The number one injury that I see is related to scald burns. The setting is usually a child or an elderly patient. In both cases, issues of abuse, neglect, or criminal issues come into consideration. And many times we are called to determine, in case of children, whether the injury was purposefully inflicted, whether it was accidentally inflicted. And as I'm sure as many of you are aware, many of these scalding burns involve issues with thermostat, hot water heater, plumbing, and issues of that nature. Many times I'm also called upon criminal cases in which there is a criminal investigation concerning children abuse. So those are issues that are certainly happens very routinely. Other types of scalding burns, of course, involve hot tea and hot coffee. Many cases in which fast food franchises are involved, of course. Hot coffee, hot tea, Chinese restaurants with the hot tea, Oriental restaurants with hot tea. These are common sources of litigation, and certainly showering and hot bath are also sources of litigation. Child and elder abuse certainly is an area that is ever present, and certainly immersion burns, the difference between what is a accidental or not immersion burn always comes into consideration. So I would say that scald burns and related injuries are probably the most common type of burn injuries that we see. Certainly represents the majority of any of the burn center admissions. By far, scalding injuries and hot water injuries or hot liquid injuries represents most of the injuries. And these are the areas that certainly we spend a lot of time. We are called many times to determine whether the temperature of the water that produced the injury was overly hot, or whether it was an issue of duration of exposure. Because here, okay, I'm gonna go and answer some of the questions, I guess, that I'm talking about. Okay. I wanna talk a little bit about what is a first, second, third, and fourth degree burn, and then there is a question as to what temperature would be required for hot water to result in second or third degree burn. I'm gonna address the issue of the temperature once we go and see a diagram that I have that addresses that issue. But first and foremost, a first degree burn is the most superficial of all the burns, and it's what we usually get when we get a sunburn, in which our skin just turns maybe red, but without any blistering. Once we have blistering, then it becomes a second degree burn. A blister is typically a superficial second degree burn, and then a deeper second degree burn would be one that is really red. The skin has been lost, there is no blistering. And a third degree burn is when all the layers of the skin have been burned, and the skin is typically leathery and either gray or white. I think that we can compare this to a tall building, like a 10-story building. In a first degree burn, the uppermost 1 or 2 stories have been burned. In a superficial second degree burn, the uppermost 3 or 4 stories have been burned. In a deep second degree burn, the uppermost 6 or 8 stories has been burned, and in a 3rd-degree burn, the building has been burned to the ground. Now, a 4th-degree burn we typically see with either chemical injuries or electrical injuries, in which not only the skin has been burned, but the underlying subcutaneous tissue and or muscle has been burned as well. And then we're going to talk about what is the temperature that is required for 2nd and 3rd-degree burns in a little bit. Let's go to the next slide, and that is tap water scalds. And as you can see there, and I hope that you can see the chart well, but typically, as you may or may not know, the thermostat in a hot water heater should be, the recommendation is to be set at 120 degrees. Now, it is very, very common to find that the setting of these hot water heaters is many times quite high, in the range of 140, 150, 155. The reason for that is because these units, sometimes they serve a row of apartments. So in order to get enough water, hot water to all the apartments, the setting is quite high, and usually that is what leads to problems. Sometimes also because the setting is so high, there are some spikes of hot temperature that can injure the patient. But 120 is the recommended setting in most of the water heaters. And as you can see, at 120 degrees, you can have a deep 2nd or 3rd-degree burn in about 5 minutes. Now, as you can see in the chart, at 140, that gets reduced to about 5 seconds. So it happens very, very quickly, and at 155 degrees, the burn injury will occur in 1 second. Now, these are tap water scalds, typically showering, typically hot water bath. And what happens in some of these cases is that even though the temperature is regulated for a shower or for a bath, sometimes flushing of the toilet or opening of another source of water, cold water, will introduce a spike in the hot water of the shower that may injure the client. So this is something we look for. Also, many of the units that are involved, apartment units that are involved, do not have anti-scalding devices, and according to each state, there are particularly laws related as to whether units should or should not be equipped with anti-scalding devices. But in general, these anti-scalding devices are quite cheap, easy to place, but many buildings or institutions lack those anti-scalding devices. So this is something that commonly occurs, that I'm commonly called upon to testify, not only upon the actual medical state of the patient, but also from a forensic point of view as to whether the temperature of the water and the duration of exposure could have indeed caused the injury as alleged by the plaintiff.